Hi, I'm Christina Martinez, and this is Bullying, Feelings of Safety, and Suicide in LGBU Youth. So the background is that there's an unfortunate rise of bullying and violence against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer youth, as well as rates of suicide. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among youth ages 15 to 24, and LGBTQ youth seriously contemplate suicide at almost 3 times the rate of heterosexual youth. And this information was taken from the Center of Disease Control in 2019. So the objectives of the study are to examine the relationship between bullying and depression, suicide, and substance use in school for youth in the US. Another objective is to examine the relationship between feelings of safety and depression, suicide, and substance use in school for youth in the US. And the last objective is to examine the relationship between sexual identity and depression, suicide, and substance use in school for youth in the US. So for the methods, secondary data analyses of the 2019 CDC National Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System was used, and the youth included in this were of ages 12 to 18, and the dependent variables were depression, and this included feelings of sadness, feelings of hopelessness, suicide, and this was suicide thinking, suicide planning, and attempting suicide. And the last dependent variable was substance use, and which is the use of illicit drugs. So for our independent variables, we looked at demographics, which were gender, age, ethnicity, race, grade level, and sexual identity. And for this particular data set, we didn't have the variable for transgender, which is why instead of LGBT, our study focuses on LGBU youth, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and unsure. And the unsure means unsure in their sexual identity, but not identifying as heterosexual. So to continue on with the independent variables, we also looked at bullying. This was in school and virtually. And also we looked at perceptions of safety. And this is if they were ever threatened or injured with the weapon at school or felt unsafe at school. So the software used was a software program called Stata, and if the p-value was less than 0.05, it was deemed to be of statistical significance. So for our demographics, we had a total of 13,677 youth, and the gender breakdown was 49% of these youth were male and 51% were female, and the race ethnicity demographic breakdown was the majority at 50.2% were white, 15.5% were black, 23% were Latinx, 4.7% Asian, 1.1% Native American or Indigenous, and 5% were of a mixed race. So the results were that compared with heterosexual youth, LGBTQ youth were significantly more likely to report bullying at school and online, be threatened or injured by a weapon, feel unsafe at school, or experience depression. And lastly, they were significantly more likely to think about, plan, and attempt suicide. So the p-values for all of these are less than 0.001, which is extremely significant. As mentioned in the previous slide, to be significant, it would have to be less than 0.05. So these are very significant. So for our multivariate analysis, we identified that the variables of feeling unsafe at school, feeling threatened or injured, being bullied online or in school, and sexual identity, identifying as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or unsure, that these were all factors that contributed to the 3 categories of suicide, which is suicide thinking and ideation, suicide planning, and suicide attempts. So in conclusion, our study contributes further evidence of the significant problem of bullying, feelings of threat at school, depression, and higher rate of suicide for LGBTQ youth. So better efforts to prevent bullying and violence towards LGBTQ youth and support their mental well-being are needed, especially right now during these times of increased isolation, emotional challenges, and inequities. And this presentation was brought to you by authors and affiliations listed below. So thank you for watching and thank you for listening.